Okay, so in the past 2 weeks or so, quite a few things have happened in terms of the business aspects of technology. So you might have heard that SpaceX has IPO'd,
Yeah.
and apart from that, Anthropic as well as OpenAI has also filed for IPO so far.
Okay.
So most likely they will also be IPOing in by the end of this year, most likely, but may not be. But so just briefly, I want to talk about OpenAI and Anthropic's status before I move on to SpaceX. So their process is what they call it as a confidential IPO. That means they are not confirmed yet. So normally what happens is when a company files for IPO is that they have to release their internal documents, like for example, the financial statements and other internal business documents, which normally as a public company they do not have to disclose. But since they are going to become a public company, so they have to disclose during the IPO process so that the potential investors and also the regular in terms of USA, it's SEC. In India, we have SEBI. So they have to, so they can take a look at it. So now what OpenAI and Anthropic has done is that they have gone through a confidential IPO process. That means that the regulators will get to look at those documents, but not the uh, regular people, because the reason is that they are not completely sure yet that they are going to IPO or not. Once they decide that, okay, we are definitely going to IPO, then they have no other option but to release them. But since they have the status of confidential IPO, that means they have filed for an IPO. The regulators, the SEC can go through the documents, but they have not done. The regular public can't do this. I think what they're trying to do is, okay, if you want to ask something.
So who decides these things like uh, that they are going to go through this process of this confidential IPO? Is it internally decided or
Yes, it is decided by the management because they are ultimately they are in charge. So what they are trying to do is that they are most likely trying to look at the scenario, the market scenario, how it's going to pan out. Most likely, from my point of view, I think that they are going to look at SpaceX because we'll come into it, SpaceX now. So they are mostly now an AI and data center company as well. So which is very similar to Anthropic and OpenAI. So I think they will probably look at how people or investors will react to SpaceX over the next few months or so, and then they'll make a decision about whether to go with their IPO right now or maybe somewhere in the future. So this is an
so
interesting.
how does this process of confidential IPO help if they do not decide to go through with it? If they want to go through with it, they can directly do the research by themselves, wait and see, and then decide to IPO. If they don't want to, then they will not do it. What is the use of doing this in the middle where you're giving the documents to SEC or whatever and
Because
then deciding not to do it? Yeah.
I think it requires a lot of, since this is a uh, thing, so it requires quite a bit of time. So even for SpaceX, it took some time for it to happen, and that's why they are uh, speeding up. I mean, they are going through the process. I would say. So that's one thing, and the other thing is they are hyping up the market uh, as early as possible. It's like the release of a movie. I think previously I talked about like Avengers Doomsday will be released in December 2026, but its promo started coming 1 year ago. And building market perception is a part of the process to hype up your valuation as much as possible. So for a company like SpaceX, they do not have to do this because first of all, Elon Musk is involved with it. So his name is enough to create a buzz around the company. And again, we'll come to the details about what happened in that IPO. But um, that's enough to create a hype around these things. So But in case of Anthropic and OpenAI, as big as they are not as big as or as popular as Elon Musk or and SpaceX. They do not have that celebrity status of Elon Musk. So suppose they had not decided to go with the confidential IPO process and decided to wait out and watch what happens with SpaceX, and then suddenly they try to go through it. But the rest of the public is not aware about what's going to happen. But in this case, now that this thing is there, I think it's been about 2 weeks. It's all around the news. So it's within the public perception. And why I'm talking about public perception is that uh, again, coming to SpaceX IPO, almost 90 they had raised SpaceX has raised $75 billion in this process in the funding round. Out of which $70 billion were put on by retail investors, not institutional investors. So what
Mm-hmm.
happens is that mostly when this kind of IPO happens or things happen, by retail investors, we mean like people like you and me, investing through apps like that. For most of investing history, retail investors were a very minor part of the process. Mostly it was institutional investors like pension funds or other hedge funds and so on. Those are managed by and even like things like mutual funds where normal people indirectly invest, and their money is managed by the portfolio managers who ultimately invest in the stock market on behalf of the regular people. So most of the time, this kind of money is being raised through those kind of mediums, through institutional investors. But look at it as SpaceX. Now, out of 75, 70 billion came from retail investors. And why is that? Because Elon Musk is such a figure and he has a fan base of that kind of thing. So it got swept away. And another thing about retail investors is that it's easier to, I won't say manipulate is the may not be the correct word, but it is easier to influence these people because it's way more difficult to influence the institutional investment firm because those are run by professional portfolio managers. Those are experienced people those are professionals. They will not get swayed away by the emotional part of it. They will properly look at the numbers. They'll do a professional analysis, and for that, in that case, it the company raising the money for them, it's much more difficult to justify the amount that they're earning. But for the regular people, you can just hype up. So I think Anthropic and OpenAI are also indirectly trying to do this by filing it early, getting into the public's minds, like mindscape, getting into the conversation, so that when the time does come, they can also have the support of the retail investors as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think my perspective. That's my, I would say, my hypothesis of why they have done an early IPO filing. And since you talked about this, another thing talk came to my mind which I wasn't initially planning, but I'll just briefly talk, is about Anthropic. So uh, I think you might have heard about their mythos and fable. They released this model and then now it is also banned from
Yeah.
other countries and so on. So again, on social media, there are different perspectives around it. So broadly, there are two perspectives that I can think about. One is that Anthropic's models are genuinely very smart and good, and they should be kept under control, otherwise it might cause real problems. On the other hand, it might be that it's very great marketing and perception. And obviously, I cannot say for sure which one is true until and unless uh, I go through the technical details about it. But on the one hand, the marketing hypothesis does not look as much as of a conspiracy theory as it might be on the surface. What I mean is that if someone says it is just it's just good marketing, that someone else might say that no, you're just not thinking logically. No, Anthropic really is a good model. But then again, it might be that it's good marketing because uh, I would say that uh, from earlier this year onwards, like them creating those ads for mocking OpenAI and so on. Then again, they have uh, publicly declined. I don't remember. Did I talk to you about like they had a contract with US military to kill some people, and they decided that they are not going to go through with that thing and those kind of things. Plus, again, the mythos thing has already been being very public. And recently, I think Anthropic was also mentioned by the Pope of Vatican City or something like that on some basis. So he was like some kind of supporting point. He was supporting this thing. So all this might on the surface seems like organic thing, but from what I could say is that also like working in marketing, what I think is that marketing doesn't just means the banners that you see on the advertisement boards and the ads that you see. Those are one form of marketing. But what I think is that every action taken by a company that is publicly visible to any extent has to be is an opportunity for marketing. And since it's an opportunity for marketing, there definitely is a marketing department in those companies. They will deliberately try as much as possible to put the narrative in their perspective. And so far, what I'm trying to see is that they are trying to be so people friendly. Like uh, we don't do ads, we don't use our AI for killing people for military purposes. The Pope is on our side. We have built such a dangerous AI, but we are not going to release it with Fable. So it might be that these are all like good marketing tactics so that they get uh, filed for IPO and so on.
But this particular thing about banning Mythos and Fable was not their decision, right? It was enforced on them by the government.
Yes. So in
So
it,
how does this benefit
yes.
them?
So first of all, I think like this is a sign of success for Anthropic because I think their marketing hype actually worked on this thing. And the counter argument might be that okay, you can't say that the marketing hype worked because the government banned it. So definitely they might be smart enough to understand marketing hype versus what's technically possible. And my counter argument is that just because they're people from government doesn't mean they are technically smart enough to understand. They can also be influenced. The clearest example is that when you might have seen interviews of Mark Zuckerberg going through these codes and the officials asking them questions. They're asking them such silly questions. Even a regular teenager will be able to ask more smarter questions than those kind of people. So they are out of touch with what's happening technologically.
Yeah,
So
so like from what I know about this news, I don't know if it is a fact or it is speculation at this point, but I read somewhere that so Fable is basically Mythos but with a lot of guardrails.
okay,
But someone from Amazon, I think CEO of Amazon, Andy Jassy or someone, I don't
yes,
know his name,
yes, and
maybe
it
not
is
him, but someone working in Amazon was able to, what is the word, jailbreak the guardrails and basically get access to the pure Mythos that is there, basically.
okay,
So the model that has a lot of cybersecurity related capabilities. And then this person or Amazon was the one who notified the government that the guardrail is it is possible to jailbreak the guardrails, and that is why the government asked Claude or Anthropic. They also basically asked only to stop access uh, to stop giving access to foreign nationals
yes.
either in US or anywhere else. So like because that is not possible, so they decided to ban it completely.
Is
So
it completely banned? I thought it is only for national.
it is that the directive is that it should be banned for foreign nationals, but there is no way to identify that.
Yes,
How do you identify which user is of what nationality or something? Especially if it is you are in the US, you just
ye-
need a Google account or something to log in.
yes,
So that is why I think they banned it completely. So from this story, it seems like a conspiracy towards or against Anthropic more than it helping Anthropic themselves.
yes. That is one point of view that it could harm Anthropic. On the other hand, like what I can think is that I think first of all, I think Anthropic is like Amazon are invested in some ways to Anthropic. Let me confirm it and then I'll talk about it. Let me see. Complexity. Okay. So Amazon has not only invested in the company, but Anthropic also uses AWS technologies. Okay, so from that perspective, if you are a company, if you are any person or a company, and you're invested in something else, so it doesn't make any sense for you to say something bad about that thing. So first of all, it logically doesn't make any sense. So you have
Yeah,
to, yeah. So
yeah,
now, on the surface level, it might seem like they are trying to sabotage their own investment. But now you have to you have to think two steps ahead. Like it's a four-dimensional chess. So initially it looks like okay, it's a ban and so on and so forth. That means less customers. The first level of analysis will look like okay, less customers, so less revenue. So it's damaging entropy. Level two would be that what does this say? The ban means it's an indirect signal that Anthropic's AI is so advanced than other AIs, which means that's the message that could be said.
mm,
So what happens is that this ban is first of all by no means it's a permanent ban. It could be overturned at any moment. So now what happens is that when they are trying to go for an IPO, they can push this narrative now that OpenAI, Gemini, we are far, far better than those models. For example, we got banned. Our model was so advanced that our models got banned. Gemini's model didn't get banned. OpenAI's model didn't get banned. Why not? Because we are so much superior. So you as an investor should invest in our company so that we can continue building such models that are far superior than other models. So this is how I would think that the game that they're playing. That is my,
could be.
again, we can never say for sure what's happening. We can only create hypotheses as outsiders. This is my hypothesis. And as much as it might look like conspiracy theories or these things, what I've learned is that the real world as I've said, is a rough place. That you might not think that these kind of things are happening, but these are happening. This is how the things work in the real world. And which finally, if I before I need to go to SpaceX, but one thing they have also before the IPO, the IPO is going to happen, may happen, may not happen, but Anthropic has raised a recent round of funding, which has valued them over OpenAI right now. So OpenAI, they are now well valued higher than OpenAI, Anthropic currently. Did you know that?
No.
Okay, yes, that's the truth. I mean, that's the truth, but I'll also uh, talking about AI. Can you see this message? No, no quiz left using advanced models this week.
Hmm.
So I already have Perplexity Pro. Now their
Yeah.
point is that now you should upgrade to the higher level Perplexity Max. So they will always keep upgrading, which reminds me of every time I see this message, it reminds me of that what was that series in Netflix? It's very dystopian AI series. Black
Black
Mirror.
Mirror.
Black Mirror,
Yeah.
one episode of very recent season of Black Mirror. So what happened was there is a person who has some brain disease or something. She is about to die. And now what they are doing, but they are from a relatively poor family. They're only husband and wife. The wife is about to die. Some brain disease is there. Then a company comes in and say, you know what? We have a solution. You can upload your brain to our thing, and then you can live. I mean, it's like connected to the cloud. Like the person is will still live, but your brain is connected to the cloud and something like that. So initially, they subscribe to one plan, and what happened is that after a few weeks they have reduced the limits. Like now, you can only be awake for like 8 hours a day, 12 hours a day. You'll be sleeping because your mind can't access that thing. That's one kind of thing. So you need to from the basic tier to the pro tier. And then that happened. And then again after a few weeks, what happened is that one day they were trying to go to some trips, go to some far outside their town. So they were going, and suddenly they were talking, the husband and wife were talking, and suddenly the wife fell asleep. Then she thought that the husband thought that something happened, went back to that company, and they said that, okay, now actually what we have done is that we have geo-fenced it. Now in the current subscription tier, you can only stay within your country, within your town, not even country, within your town. If you want to move to another town, you need connection to your brain mind. You need to like upgrade to the Pro Max tier now. So this is what's happening. Like earlier, that feature was available, the roaming around feature was available at the Pro level, but now they had upgraded it to the Pro Max level. So what ultimately that's the thing that kept happening to them, and since it's a dystopian series, ultimately the ending is not good. Like they kill themselves and so on. So because they can't afford to pay anymore. So that was the thing.
So,
So
yeah, this kind of thing has a term actually. I think it's called enshittification.
yes, enshrification. Yeah, I think
So
yeah.
yeah, we are seeing the enshittification of AI, and also, I mean, I don't know, but they it was not profitable, right? They're not making positive revenue. The AI
They're
companies.
yes, they are not profitable once they have their revenues. What happens is
I mean, yeah,
after
they have no
revenue you
profit.
need to yes, you need to account for the cost. They are not profitable. So in and of itself, it's not a problem for startups because startups in the early phase of their business, they are not profitable on their own. They need external funding, but over time they need to become profitable. So who knows what's going to happen to this AI companies? But mostly, yes, can't be said. Just briefly. Okay, so yes, OpenAI is currently valued at $852 billion and Anthropic is at $965 billion. So yeah, that is the amount. So they are most valued AI company, private AI company. Okay, now finally I have to move on to SpaceX. So broadly, what's happening is that there are again two parties. One of them says that this is a big opportunity for SpaceX to grow, and there's a bright future ahead for SpaceX. Broadly speaking, there is one group of people. The other group of people are the ones who are skeptics, who are saying that this is just a scam and a way to take money from people, and nothing's good is going to come out. Like there is no structure to it. So I will, before I give my opinions, I'll go through some series of videos and see what these people have to say about this thing. So first I'll go into this one. So the person on the right here is Brett Winton, who is one of the research analysts at ARK Invest. His firm has invested in SpaceX, and so he's a pro SpaceX person. So I want to see what his perception is. Let me start. Can you hear the audio?
Not yet.
Yeah, maybe I should reshare it because I did not share the audio last time.
I wanted you just to kindly remind us of how ARK invested in
Can you hear it
SpaceX,
now?
the sort of
Yeah.
venture mechanism that you have, and then we'll go into the thesis.
Yeah, so SpaceX AI is the largest position in our venture fund, which is an interval fund that anybody, not just the rich, can invest in, and we did that because, as you can see from the retail demand for the IPO, people understand kind of like the potential power of these innovation-focused companies, and we think that everyday people should be able to get
Even
access to
I can't hear it right now because I haven't put on the earphones.
these AI exposures, including OpenAI, Anthropic, SpaceX, which are the top positions in the fund. And so we've invested in SpaceX, as long as the vehicle's been available. And, from the inception of ARC, we had reusable rockets as a breakthrough disruptive technology. And so I've done work all along the way demonstrating how being able to reduce cost of launch from $10,000 to $1,000 to, we think, much less than $100 with Starship actually unlocks huge market potential, certainly on the Starlink side and kind of as a second stage on the AI side.
Okay, and for AI, one needs data centers. We need, therefore, maybe data centers in space. This is the entire pitch that we now go through. Your workings, your numbers, your thesis on orbital data centers, Brett.
Yeah, well, what's interesting about the SpaceX IPO is you actually don't need the AI business to really work that well in order to actually get a great return on kind of just the Starlink business. So, Elon and co, they are saying they're going to be able to launch tens of gigawatts per
Okay,
year
can you stop
by
here once?
the late 2020s. So
Did you say
So,
something?
yeah, so right now, what are the different sources of revenue for SpaceX?
So right now, up until the merger with XAI, SpaceX had broadly two sources of revenue. The first was space launch, and the second was Starlink. Space launch means they launch payloads like satellites to space, like other companies' uh, satellites to space within the SpaceX rockets. So they charge for those rockets. So that's one source of revenue. The other is Starlink, the satellite internet connection. So that's the other source of revenue. So in and of itself, but considering only that too, they are not such a big company. So they only made $18 billion, and again, SpaceX itself, they were loss making. They didn't make any profit. A loss of $5 billion. Again, let me go through Perplexity and show you the numbers. So it says around 18.7 billion revenue in 2025, broken down across three main verticals, which is, so again, this is AI is very recent. I think February of this month itself they merged it. But for most of its history, it was mostly space launch and Starlink. So this space Starlink provided $11.4 billion, space launch $4.1 billion, and then we have AI with $3.2 billion. So
So here they're saying it's like minus or it's a loss
yes,
of 200% for
yes,
the
this,
AI
yes,
vertical.
yes. Only this part is profitable actually. Only the Starlink is profitable. SpaceX itself, the space launch itself is a loss-making venture. It makes 16% loss, and since AI is definitely going to be loss-making, so there's not much surprise here, which is 200%. And since Anthropic and OpenAI are not public companies, but if I am quite sure if you look at their numbers, it will look something like this too at the early stage. But if you look at the
So
space launch,
because
yeah, continue.
so because it went through an IPO, we have this data. So this before this IPO, this data was not
Yeah,
accessible.
yes, it was not accessible. So we don't have any such data for OpenAI or Anthropic. And now again, if you look at the space launch itself, it's still loss making, even though that's probably the first business. Starlink came later on. Why? That's because space again, rockets are not reusable currently. I mean, they're working on Starship, which is not operational yet, but and that's why that's so important. Now, again, the analogy that people give here is that if you suppose you take a flight from place A to place B, and what happens is that once you land, the flight blasts, it explodes. So imagine how much the price of a ticket would be if one plane could be used only once. Because every time you need to go to some place, you have to build a new plane from scratch. The cost would be 100 times whatever it is currently. So think the fact that airplanes are reusable is the reason why the cost is so low. And that's the whole rationale behind making reusable rockets. This will make the costs come down exponentially low. And finally, this might turn into positive. And for the AI thing, this is the most debatable part. So let's see what he has to say more on this.
And Elon and co, they are saying they're going to be able to launch tens of gigawatts per year by the late 2020s. So an easy way to think of a gigawatt, you can rent it out at the current market rate over the long term. It's something like $15 billion per gigawatt. So imagine launching tens of gigawatts times $15 billion, so $300 billion in incremental revenue in any individual year that you're doing that. The reality of their AI business today is on a blended average basis, they have just rented capacity to Google and Anthropic for just a little under $40 billion per gigawatt. So actually serving it as an infrastructure, as a service provider could be a wildly lucrative business for them because they can build assets on the ground so efficiently, and once they launch into space, they can build it efficiently.
You know, Brett, like you are as a firm regarded as some of the most bullish on Elon Musk, like the individual and the plan that they outlined in the prospectus. But there, of course, are risks. Right? You know, Musk posted on X last night this idea that 1 million tons to orbit will be possible in roughly 5 years. Starship on paper can do 150 metric tons on paper, right? You do the math. That's 1,333 launches a year, every year for 5 years to do that. You know, you would concede, right, that this is a long shot.
Well, he always lays out super ambitious targets for his companies because that's the way he's found to make his workforce most effective at actually delivering world-changing technologies. think about it this way. Just look at the Starlink business and imagine look at SpaceX, imagine instead of launching Falcon 9 rockets, I'm launching Starship rockets at the same cadence filled with Starlink satellites. That alone would get me in 2 years of launching to roughly a little under $200 billion in revenue. So you don't have to make an assumption that the company is going to be launching, at even 1,000 launches a year in order to get into the kind of mostly on Starlink, $300 to $400 billion in revenue by 2030. So there's this discourse out there that, hey, this company on a price to sales basis on the immediate term looks very expensive, and poor retail is investing in this thing because they don't understand. The whole point of capital markets is you raise capital and then you deploy it in high return on invested capital businesses. And Starlink alone it's a 6-month cash on cash return for 5-year linked satellites. They're going to spend $500 million building or launching a rocket filled with satellites and acquiring the customers, and it should generate them $1 billion plus per year over the 5-year life of the satellite. So that's a great business.
So Brett, I mean, unarguable, if you think about how much you've returned, 25,000% has been returned since Tesla went public. But what is also unarguable is, as it stands, SpaceX net loss $4.28 billion on revenue of $4.69 billion in the first quarter. When does it become positive? Does it need to become positive? Are you happy it being loss-making for the foreseeable because the revenues are just going to go so astronomically high?
No, I think that profitability, at least as we have it modeled, happens very quickly as they launch the Starlink satellites. It really depends upon how much capital they are throwing at terrestrial data centers to try to catch up with the frontier labs in terms of Grok's capability. You can build an amazing business just basically renting compute to others and running Starlink, but there's clearly both an ambition and then a higher margin in actually kind of like competing with Anthropic and OpenAI. In our view, that probably doesn't happen until SpaceX is launching,
Brett,
multiple gigawatts into orbit.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. There is a disconnect, and that many people share this thesis. Right, the TAM number in the prospectus, 26.5 trillion, was for enterprise AI, and I appreciate there's sub-buckets. In the here and now, they've basically played a blinder with a ready-to-go neocloud business. And lots of people keep telling me, like, in the end, it doesn't matter if Grok works or is competitive against Anthropic and OpenAI. They just rent out the capacity, and that will fund the out-of-this-world ambition. What would you respond to that?
I think that's possible. As in the way in which we model the business, that is the more likely outcome. I think to compete, to get to the frontier by 2030, you'll need between 30 and 50 gigawatt years of compute and training. Because xAI started later and they're trying to build their own infrastructure, it's very difficult for them to catch up on that amount of kind of R&D compute thrown at their model, with the caveat that if assuming that they merge with Tesla over the next couple of years, cash flow from Tesla could actually fund catch-up for them.
You assume that?
I think it's a reasonable assumption, or more likely than not, after the company lists and its shares are all floating, that there is a merger between the entities. It makes a ton of strategic sense. And as we model Tesla, like the cash flow flowing off Robotaxi, they can't effectively deploy it. So, I'm not going to want a special dividend out to shareholders for Tesla. I want them to continue to reinvest in growth. Optimus, the robot business, requires, it's not capital constrained, it's really like capability constrained. And so, whereas SpaceX actually can use additional capital to continue to accelerate growth.
Okay, so what he said is that most of it, so even without the AI part of it, if they expand, what he's trying to say that if they expand the Starlink business itself, it can create a lot of revenue. I forgot the exact numbers. He did it say it's 700.
Starlink satellites. That alone would get me in 2 years of launching to roughly a little under $200 billion
he is saying that within 2 years, Starlink itself will generate $200 billion. And how much is it earning now? $11 billion. So he is expecting quite a lot. Again, okay, another thing we need to consider is the amount of launches that needs to be made. So first information that I need is how much launches that they made last year. So let me just look at those numbers. So in 2025, they made around 165 to 170 launches, including 165 actual mission launches. I assume that orbital launches means those things. And these are test launches for Starship. So 170. So here we have, so for the 5 months, it's 70. So if you like assume it's going to go at the same rate, that means roughly around the same number of satellites that launched in 2025, around 170 launches this year as well. But the assumption was that for the data center business to grow, to build out the data centers in space, they need to launch 1,331 satellites every year for the next 5 years. So it's around 10, almost 10 times more than what they are currently doing. So that's what the interviewer asking them. Is it realistically possible to expand, to increase the growth, to expand the number of launches by 10 times so quickly? So that was the question here. And I think that the only way it might even be possible is if starships become operational. By starship, I mean the spaceships which can land, which are reusable. So if that does happen, again, I'm not keeping up with the development of what's happening there. I need to check those out. How much is it in the production stage versus how much is it in the test stage? I don't know how close it is to the real life deployment stage. I'm not sure, but in terms of what they're assuming, it has to happen very soon for it to happen. I need a bit more confirmation about what he is saying here. Okay.
Last night, this idea that 1 million tons to orbit will be possible in roughly 5 years. Starship on paper can do 150 metric tons on paper, right? You do the math. That's 1,333 launches a year, every year for 5 years to do that. You know, you would concede, right, that it's a long shot.
Well, he always lays out super ambitious targets for his companies because that's the way he's found to make his workforce most effective at actually delivering world-changing technologies. Think about it this way. Just look at the Starlink business and imagine look at SpaceX, imagine instead of launching Falcon 9 rockets, I'm launching Starship rockets at the same cadence filled with Starlink satellites. That alone would get me in 2 years of launching to roughly a little under $200 billion in revenue. So you don't have to make an assumption that the company is going to be launching, at even 1,000 launches a year in order to get into the kind of mostly on Starlink, $300 to $400 billion in revenue by 2030.
Okay. One thing I'm not clear here is that he said that even instead of using Falcon 9, if they start using Starship to launch the Starlink satellites, that itself can create $200 billion revenue in the next 2 years. But again, he did not mention how many how many launches would be required for deploying those Starlinks. Those are the numbers that are required to make a more quantitative decision about that. So overall, what I can say is that even though he's an analyst, he doesn't sound very convincing in a rational way. The way I would term is that he is more of a speculative nature. His things are being told in a very speculative nature, more like a science fiction document. I mean, the way he's saying it is more like how Neil deGrasse Tyson speaks in a documentary through the cosmos and those kind of things. You're imagining things to happen and those kind of things, which is true. But as an analyst, that's not going to happen. And why I'm saying this, because I have learned this from experience, from one of my job interviews. Because
Okay.
I was like that, the interviewer really grilled me on this. To this day, I remember those things, and I'm trying to improve those kind of things. Because every claim that I made, he wanted data from me. Not data, but at least either data or some kind of rational justification. You can think like a science fiction writer, like maybe this will happen, and why do you think this is going to happen? What's the rationale behind it? So here I can say that he was not able to justify that 1,331 rockets can. How will this happen? Which and why that's important, because they are mostly going to be an AI company, which will require the building out of data centers in space, which will require the starships to be operational to carry all the raw materials to build out in space. So how confident is he as an investor that this is really going to happen? He was not able to justify it properly. So that's my takeaway from this one. Any thoughts on this?
No, also like no specific technical thoughts, but I just feel like whenever this kind of topics are discussed or like this kinds of interviews, most of the thing like it does not their answer do not relate to the question most of the time. I feel like the person would be asking something and the responses will have maybe 20 to 30% of the answer to the question, and the rest of the thing will be something else. So like it doesn't usually like and maybe these are like not planned out scripted interviews, so they're trying to improvise it on the spot what to answer. But my view is that like I usually get confused even more when I listen to this kind of interviews, like, what they're actually trying to say.
And again, to this, I'll say that this is how the world works, at least in business and finance. Because what I'm trying to, what I've realized, like, as someone who, on the one hand, I look at content like videos and interviews from pure science and technology perspective. And there are people who are theoretical physicists and scientists, and they are one category of people. And on the other hand, there are this kind of business people who are investors, analysts, CEOs of companies. These are the kind of content I listen to. So they, and also someone like who is also now working more in the business part than more on the science part. So the mindset in science is like to get the absolute truth. So if you ask a question X, I will try to answer that question as much as possible. No moving around and something like that. My point is, it's like we are both collaborating towards a specific truth. That's the goal in the data fine when I hear scientists interviews. Here, what happens is that it's less of a collaborative thing and more of a sports, like it's a football match or a boxing match. So in from his perspective, now from the interviewer's perspective, he is trying to find out the rationale behind, okay, he's asking like, okay, you think it's you're optimistic on SpaceX. How do you define that they're going to launch 1,331 satellites? So instead of him directly trying to answer that question, he knows he can't. So what he's trying to do is he's trying to justify his investment by bringing on the other angle. He's saying that, okay, it doesn't even matter that part. I'm not going to justify that part by directly answering that. What the angle he's trying to make is that Starship, no, sorry, he's trying to focus, trying to take the conversation to the Starlink part of the business. And he's trying to justify that Starlink alone can bring it to those kind of $200 billion. So he is trying to get the match to his point of view. So that's the game that they're playing. So both are trying to find their way and try to win the conversation. And both are trying to do this in whatever way as possible. Which is like if you hear, like I think I recently listened to Satya Nadella as well. He was also being asked about something. Yes, I remember exactly where I found this one. I'll show you. Same kind of trickery was used there. Don't have to take a look where exactly he said this. Okay, let's look at this. We last talked December of 2024. That means the interviewer last talked to Satya Nadella back in 2024. And this interview just happened a few days ago in June of 2026. So about 2 weeks ago. So he says that to say a lot has changed since 2024 is an understatement. I had a bunch of questions I wanted to ask you about the business as a whole, things going on. I am going to start with those. Then I have questions about the presentation at the end. But relative to that, I want to ask you one simple question. Are you happy with Microsoft's current competitive position? That's the direct question. Are you happy? Yes or no? That should be the answer. What is it? Only this is the trickiest thing. You can sit there and say, I'm happy. That means you're not ambitious enough. And when you say, if you're not competitive, what the heck are you doing? This is the answer to this question. The direct answer should be that, okay, I think it should either be like this. Ideally, if it was a conversation between scientists, that is how a scientist would answer. Are you happy with Microsoft competitive position? Option one, yes, I think our models and our infrastructure are good enough, so I'm happy that we are in a good competitive position. Number two would be no, I'm not happy because I think we are lagging behind other companies. We do not have a frontier model and so on. So I'm not happy. I think we need to work on that. He didn't give any of such answers. He gave this answer. What is he trying to say here? Like you need to again, there is a skill in trying to learn what he's trying to say here. Let me try to say it's like symbolic in nature. You have to it's not what the word means. You need to look what the intention behind it is. What he's saying is that you can sit here and say I'm happy. So if I say I'm happy, that means I'm not competitive enough. That means I have become complacent. And that means if you're not competitive enough, what are you doing? So indirectly, what he's trying to say is that they are not in a good position. That is my interpretation. Because if they were, he would keep saying over and over again, but they are not. And as a CEO of a company, any kind of bad PR, any kind of bad statement, negative statement about the company is going to affect the share price and overall sentiment about the company. So he cannot directly say that no, we are not uh, at the same level as the other our competitors. So that's what we can say. I'm going to say, so in a way he's telling the truth that I'm not happy, but the reason he is not directly saying that I'm not happy because we are lagging behind. He is saying that I'm not happy because if I say I'm happy, that means I'm becoming complacent. And as a competitor, we should never be happy. We should always keep fighting. So that's the CEO language of saying things. So you have to interpret. That's what the job of an analyst is, to decipher this kind of secret codes, the code language that they speak in.
Mm.
So the takeaway in one word is that never take their words. So if you are reading or listening to something spoken by a businessman, a business person, anything related to business and finance, never take their word at face value, the literal value of it. There is a symbolic or some third degree level of interpretation within that statement. So that's the trick to understand what's the intention behind that. Okay, so that was done. And that was more of a pro one. And there are quite a bit of pro. So, okay, I won't go through those things because of time. I'll go with this one probably. Yes, this is more of an anti SpaceX. I'll not go to the full video, maybe the first 5 minutes or so.
Maybe you can summarize this video as well.
Using the summary.
The ask option is there, right? In the
Yes. I mean, I have summarized it before, but I can also go through this. Let me just summarize it. So, are you able to see it?
yeah. So they did not file for the IPO under as a aerospace firm, but more as a computer programming and data processing firm.
Yes, exactly.
So how does it make it any different? Like in terms of their actual workings, they will do what they're going to do, right?
Yes, exactly. And I don't know how this actually helps in any ways, because a company might be a conglomerate, like it might have multiple businesses. So in that way, I don't know how this actually helps, but yes, I don't know this. It will keep doing whatever it's doing. So anyway, let me just look at first 2-3 minutes. That will give you much more context. And then you can again come back to this summary again.
If you give me $500, would I invest it into SpaceX? I think I would, yeah.
No, I wouldn't that.
You would not.
No, but I hope my index funds aren't automatically doing it.
Hi, welcome to another episode of Cold Fusion. SpaceX is an incredible company with impressive achievements. It brought the price of space launches down by 85%. Objectively, that is astonishing. The company also made reusable rockets a reality. Many critics said that was impossible. If you love your engineering and
So
physics,
here one
yep,
point I have.
great company. But now,
Did you say
Like
something?
again he's showing that the reusable rockets and things, right? And he's saying like they made it a reality. But are they, you said they're not being used for practical purposes yet.
Yes, he has not, but he has said that it has reduced the cost of launch, but without the
How?
stars, without that part. He did not mention the reusable rockets. I think he used this figure, but
impressive achievements.
none of these
It
three,
brought the price of
Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy, none of these are reusable. So I
Yeah,
think
these
he's
are not
comparing.
reusable. And then he mentioned again that they have also bought in, like they have made the reusable rockets a reality. So if you're saying it is a reality, that means it is being used.
No, I think they are not operationally reality. They are reality in a sense that they exist, but they are not used in.
So practically it has no impact.
Yes, no, they are not used for any practical launches. They have
So
signed, they have
using
engineering.
that will further improve the revenue, or like the uh,
Yes,
outlook of the company.
yes. So this 85% reduction that he has mentioned is compared to the older versions of the rockets, not not accounting for the reusable rockets. The cost has been reduced by 85% compared to the older versions of the rockets. Now, taking into account the reusable rockets, I think that the cost of launch will go even further down. Those are not operationally used.
space launches down by 85%. Objectively, that is astonishing. The company also made reusable rockets a reality. Many critics said that was impossible.
Now he made this point after this point. So after 80, he said it also made this rocket a reality, which is factually true that it is a reality, but it's not used operationally yet.
If you love your engineering and physics, yep, great company. But now there's a massive problem. Recently, something has gone terribly wrong with the company. It's no longer what most people think it is. Let me ask you a question. What type of company do you think SpaceX is? You might say a rocket cargo company that operates satellite communications. For those who are more optimistic, you could say that SpaceX is an exploration company who will take humanity to the moon and beyond. Well, according to their own S1 filing, the documents a company needs to file before it goes public on the stock market, both of those answers are wrong. Generally, S1 filings list the industry category that a company is under. For example, the industry code 3760 is for spacecraft, 3182 is for defense and aeronautical. Other companies like Virgin Galactic, Boeing, etc. all file under these categories. But for SpaceX, they filed under the industry code of 7370. That's computer programming and data processing. Oh, it looks like SpaceX is officially filing to be an AI data center company. That already raises an eyebrow, but it's worse than that. To understand how, you first need to understand what a TAM is. TAM stands for Total Addressable Market. It's the maximum revenue opportunity available for a product or service if you achieved 100% market share. It basically represents to your investors what the market for your product is. Looking at the prospectus, SpaceX's TAM is 28.5 trillion, approximately the size of the GDP of the United States. Okay, that's pretty high, but that's not the bizarre part. The strangest part is only 15% of this market is space and communications, and it's the strangest part is only of the United States. Okay, that's pretty high.
This is one of the important part of this thing is SpaceX has laid out that where will their future revenue come from. So what they have said is that the total potential for earning revenues, I don't know, they have not mentioned any timelines. Okay. But they are saying that it's $28.5 trillion that they can capture. Total addressable market is the maximum possible customer that they can attain.
So is it
There
like
is
the market cap, market?
no, it's not the market cap, it's the market. Like for example, suppose you open a restaurant which is for your locality. Now, if you ask if you are asked like what's the total addressable market, so you'll say that this whole town is my total addressable market. So I can capture the whole town. That's my area of business. So that's what it means.
But in terms of money, how would you say for the restaurant? So all the expendable money that is there in the town will come to me.
No, like for example, suppose I would say that, okay, let's go to a more simpler one. Let's take a canteen for a university or college. So its total addressable market is all the students and the faculty of that institute, which is the theoretical, because not everyone is going to eat there. So suppose they're open for lunch and dinner, okay, and maybe per person the lunch is, suppose again, to simplify, lunch is 100 rupees, and dinner is also 100 rupees. So per person maximum you can get 200 rupees per day, and then you multiply it by the total number of students and faculty in that institute. So that's your total addressable market. Obviously, it's going to be practically very impossible to get that amount of money every day or at all. But that is largest possible, the theoretical largest possible market that you have. Did you get any idea?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
So
somewhat understood. Yeah.
yes. So that's the theoretical largest possible market. And obviously, not every student will come for lunch and dinner every single day. So your realistic daily income will definitely be less than what was the theoretical limit. So $28.5 trillion is kind of like that, is the theoretically addressable market for SpaceX. So that's one part. But if you look at the breakdown out of this, what are the different verticals? The verticals mean what are the different businesses within SpaceX that can capture all of that? Of which this enterprise applications is by far the highest one, 22.7 trillion, which I would assume is the like AI, enterprise level AI. That's what I would think.
But like it seems, so they have also not given a timeline, and also this amount itself sometimes like it is higher than the operating revenue or margins of any company. So they are saying they will be making 22 point, or they will be capturing this much amount of the value from the enterprises.
Yes,
But so many enterprise as a whole may not be worth this much.
yes, it is almost the entire GDP of the US. It's just a little bit. That means practically what they're saying is that if every company and every human being in the United States starts giving all their money to SpaceX, only then this is the amount of money that they are going to get. So again, that's also based on current uh, scenario of these things. But again, as you have rightly mentioned, they have not given a timeline. But say if this is maybe 10 or 15 years down the line, the market can, I would say, the earning level of the companies will also increase in the next 10, 15 years, which it is not. So, and these are forward-looking statements. So obviously it will happen like this. Like for example, in and of itself, it's not a complete scam, because certain categories do not exist at all. And if you say something about those categories in the present, it would seem absurd. For example, electric vehicles and autonomous cars didn't exist in the year 2000, 26 years ago. And if someone came up with an idea that I'm going to create a company which is going to create electric vehicles, and it is going to also run on AI, and the market cap of this company is going to be $1 trillion, people will think you are crazy, because at that point there were no electric vehicles, there was no AI in the way we know it, autonomous driving, and there was certainly not any trillion-dollar companies. at all. Even the most valued company was not $1 trillion company. But now that crazy idea is a reality. Tesla is $1 trillion company. It runs on EV. It has quite high levels of autonomous driving. Not fully autonomous, but quite a high level of AI driving. So these are forward-looking statements. So to an extent, it might seem absurd looking at when you look at it from the presence point of view, but things might happen or not. But it's the job of the analyst to look at it and verify the validity of this kind of claims.
Mhm.
Anyway, so the point here is that if we look at all the different categories, now if we broadly divide it into three parts, of which of the $28.5 trillion, 26 is from AI only. AI infrastructure, consumer, and all of those things. Connectivity, Starlink, and those things, $1.6 trillion. And space enabled solutions, by this I would assume, again, the providing launch services and charging for those launch services to launch satellites in space. That's going to be very less. But at this surface level, this is still $370 billion. And as I've just shown you, 2025, it was only $18.7 billion in total revenue.
Mhm.
So this uh, this looks very, very speculative. Like if you look at it on the surface level, it looks like crazy. Like uh, it's very difficult to believe this kind of things. And that's why this criticism is here. So let me look at just 2-3 more minutes and then.
But that's not the bizarre part. The strangest part is only 15% of this market is space and communications, and it's written right here in front of your face in plain text on page 11. So 85% of the company is essentially just a wrapper for yet another LLM and data center business like Anthropic or OpenAI. I know some of you guys have commented that you're getting sick of hearing about AI, but this isn't funny anymore. It's getting really serious. When SpaceX went public, it was the largest launch of any company in the history of financial markets, larger than Amazon, Google, Alibaba, and even Saudi Aramco. In the first few hours of trading, SpaceX blasted past a valuation of $2.3 trillion, instantly becoming the 7th most valuable company and worth approximately the same as the country of Canada. For some people, this seemed like a sign of strength, but for others, it was terrifying, the signs of an overheated market. But that's not all. The story of the SpaceX IPO is telling us something if we listen closely. It shines a light on the state of the current financial markets. A corporation is hiding an AI company losing $1 billion a month inside the brand of a perfectly healthy rocket company, just so investors fund it. Let me say that again. In 2026, a corporation can disguise an AI company losing almost $1 billion a month inside of a perfectly healthy rocket company, sell it to investors, and get away with it.
You know, your expectation is not going to be a good investment, and that's the part that I'm trying to understand. I found it's never been a great bet to bet against Elon.
I'll grant you all that. If you, again, look at the S1, the TAM, the total addressable market, is defined at 28.5 trillion. 85% of that TAM is in AI. So even if everything you say about SpaceX and Starlink is true, the entire company is being bet on AI in terms of its future, not on space and not on Starlink. Those are his words, not mine.
It's a mess, and in this episode it's going to be a wild ride. And a disclaimer, none of this is financial advice. If you want to buy the stock, buy it. If you don't. But let's get into it.
You are watching Cold Fusion TV.
But let's get into it.
Even SpaceX themselves are mentioned. Like, we have a history of net losses and may not achieve profitability in the future. So
if you want to buy the stock, buy it. If you don't. But let's get into it.
You are watching Cold Fusion TV.
There's a lot of excitement about what's going to happen.
Everything they can possibly do to guarantee a pop is being done.
This is going to become the largest company on the planet.
For over 2 decades, SpaceX earned its dominance the hard and old-fashioned way. 3 catastrophic early failures, a near bankruptcy that Musk described as existential, a methodically driven slow rise, and finally, a near monopoly on orbital launches. In a company full of moonshots, if we isolate Starlink, it's the only thing that actually makes money. The Starlink internet service has a constellation of over 9,000 satellites and generated $11.4 billion in revenue and $4.4 billion in operating profit in 2025. But the rest of the company is another story, and trust me, we'll get to that. And from here, the controversy begins. When people talk about the broader market, they're referring to the S&P 500. It includes...
Okay, so again, what he has said is that what I found interesting about this commentator's comments. He is Steve Eisman. He is also quite a famous investor here. So unlike the one we listened earlier, he is quite pessimistic here. And the reason he mentioned is very clear. And his reason is the exact counter argument to what the other analyst said. He said that even if the other analyst, he said that even if you exclude the AI business, Starlink alone can earn a lot of money, like $200 billion or something. But he is making the right point here, Steve Eisman. He's saying that 85% of the whole business is based on AI business, is going to be AI related. And the whole IPO's valuation that they are raising $75 billion. The whole logic that they're giving is that we are going to build this AI company, and that's why we need all this money. So so when you're asked about that, you cannot give a counter argument like, okay, even if this AI business doesn't work out, the Starlink enough is going to Starlink alone is going to release is going to earn us all the money. That's not a very convincing argument for a business. Did you get my logic? What I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's trying to say, this is what Steve Eisman is saying, that exactly that doesn't make sense. That's one of the strong points here. And now look at the positive side. Again, we have seen that the only thing that makes money here is Starlink. Space launch till now it's still a loss-making part of the business. So what I can see is that space launch is a very costly business. That's the takeaway from here, because that's actually their first product. SpaceX actually started as a space launch company. Starlink came later on. So, and I think so they have been around about 20 years, and in the 20 years they're still not being able to make space launch profitable. And again, I'm trying to discount the AI business just by looking at the space launch business. The only way I think it can be made positive is through the Starship thing, using the reusable rockets. Only then I think the cost launch will come down enough so that it creates an overall profit of launching things in space. Unless that thing happens, it is going to be a loss-making company. That's one point. The second point is that even if that becomes a profitable company, it still is going to be a very small niche area of company. Space launch. It's not going to become a Google, a Microsoft, or an Nvidia kind of huge big company in and of itself. Space launch is a very niche area. Now, what Elon Musk is planning here, what I can see here is that he can, instead of keeping, now I'm talking pro SpaceX here, since I have to look at both the sides. Now, looking at it from Elon Musk's perspective, what he's trying to do is that he has realized that SpaceX alone as a business is not going to reach any level of profitability as other businesses, but he can create a bigger company of which space launch is a part of, and he can vertically integrate it. That means he can use the capability of SpaceX's launch capabilities in something else that can create much more revenues. And in this case, what he has come up with it is creating data centers in space, which is a more higher revenue generating opportunity. And what's the first thing you need to create data centers in space is to take the raw materials from space, from Earth to space. And which company is currently best positioned to do it? SpaceX. By far, it is the best launch company with the capabilities. So he can now use this thing to create this AI business in a far better way than any other company can right now. So he is now using this space launch capability that they have built over the last 20 years into this area. And this is how Elon Musk is trying to extract the maximum benefit out of its space capability, space launch expertise that they have built. That is my logic of understanding. And when I say they are ahead, they are really ahead in the kind of space launch capabilities. The other companies like Blue Origin and so on, they are far, far behind SpaceX. So before I say anything, do you have any thoughts?
So when you say far behind, in terms of what, like in terms of the number of flights they do, in terms of the tech itself, or as a whole?
I think again, both in terms of the flights and both in terms of the number of flights and the technological capability that they possess. Because I was about to say about there was a recent, I would say, not a launch but a blast of
Yeah, I remember.
of
Blue
Blue
Origin,
Origin.
right? Yeah.
Yes. So let me go through this news and then I'll talk about more of it. This was their third ever mission, for context. So this was a different one. And again, another one again launched, again failed on 27 May 2026. So now this was, they're carrying some kind of space mobile. Okay. Now from what I've heard, it has also okay. So New Glenn is grounded for the foreseeable future. Earlier, it said that their original plan was for 12 launches in 2026, but now it's grounded for the foreseeable future. And let's look at the NASA issue. So Artemis 5, Artemis 5 lunar lander, the Blue Origin had a contract, but okay, that's not the important part, but this one, Artemis 3 lander competition, they're likely to lose to SpaceX due to inability to launch soon. Again, moon-based 1 to 3 programs, the orbital launch is delayed, may need to rebook on SpaceX Starship Falcon Heavy. So this is, so again, I'm not going to go into moon-based thing, but again, I think so over the past 2 weeks, there was again this news about from the NASA administrator about their strategic plan on building a base on moon. Maybe next time I'll cover it in more details, but I think Blue Origin was a part of this whole deal about doing these things. But this recent failure might have put those things at risk because it questions their capability of carrying out missions. So they might now switch to SpaceX. So this kind of things are happening. So this sentence, let's look at it. Blue Origin's inability to launch Blue Moon lander anytime soon is likely to put it out of running for Artemis 3, making NASA's lunar program dependent on SpaceX for the time being. Okay, so as you can see, one of their competitors are so bad that SpaceX doesn't even have to pitch themselves. It's like, okay, this is now, you don't have any other option, you have to come to us. So that's the scenario. So finally, let me look at the launches. Look, this is what Blue Origin has done in 2025. 165 to 170, Blue Origin 2. 70 to 71 so far, Blue Origin 3. So you can see
So
where
the two of those three were exploded.
I don't think they are including the exploded ones here.
Yeah, because it is the new Glen name is there, right?
Yes. I don't know if they included the exploded one. That means only one has happened, but I'm assuming it's not the exploded ones, the successful ones. Three plus two exploded. So that's the scenario. So you can see where the competition stays in terms of SpaceX. Now there is another company called Rocket Lab, but their satellites are quite small, so their capacity is quite small. But I'd like to compare them to. Okay. Again, if you look at the ratio, 9:1, like SpaceX has launched 9 times more rockets as compared to Rocket Lab. But the thing is that their capacity is much smaller. They can't carry higher payload. So let me say, won't make the thinking part. It takes a lot of time. So Falcon 9 can take 4,000 kilograms to sun-synchronous orbits. Rocket Labs can take only 200 kilogram. So it's 20 times more capable, SpaceX. And in terms of geosynchronous orbit, SpaceX can take 8,300 kilograms. Rocket Lab can't go even those kind of levels. Mars not even possible. So SpaceX can go there, but Rocket Lab can't even go there.
So
So
have SpaceX already sent any rockets to Mars?
I think so. Let's ask and confirm. Okay, the SpaceX has not launched any rockets to Mars or Moon.
So that's just theoretical estimate.
Yes, where did it go? Yes. So this is a theoretical limit, but they are not even capable. So Rocket Labs is a very niche kind of, they provide niche rocket services. Like they dedicate a small satellite launches less than 300 kilograms to very low orbits. They are not very high. So they are not direct competitors of SpaceX at all. So they target a very different kind of market. So yeah. So, but I think so they are working, SpaceX is working with NASA to carry the both people and payload to moon using their spaceships. So I think that's how they're going to do it. So conclusion is that in terms of space capabilities, SpaceX is way above its competitors. No one is even close to them in terms of, I mean, technological capabilities. In terms of financial health, they are, yes, not in a very good condition, but we'll have to wait and watch what happens. So anything else?
No, that's it.
So I think I can stop.
Yeah.